Jake Morrison stood in the middle of the giant hall, looking up at the 12 alien beings who made all the big decisions for this part of space. The building was made of some kind of crystal that made rainbow colors dance on the walls. It should have been beautiful, but right now it felt cold and unfriendly. The hall was so big that Jake felt like a tiny ant. The alien council members sat on high platforms that made them look down at him. That was probably the point. They wanted him to feel small and powerless. Speaker Vorthak was the leader of the council. He looked like a giant lizard that could walk on two legs. His skin changed colors depending on how he felt, and right now it was a dark, angry red. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the whole hall. "Human," Vorthak said, and the way he said it made it sound like a bad word. "Your people have gone too far. In just 200 years you have spread to 47 different star systems. This is not acceptable." Jake kept his face calm even though his heart was beating fast. He had been expecting this, but hearing it still hurt. "We have only settled on empty planets. We have not taken anything from anyone." A clicking sound came from Counselor Cythera. She looked like a giant bug with too many arms and eyes that moved in different directions. "Empty or not, you move too fast. You build too much. You change too much. The Krolex people took 5,000 years to spread to the same number of worlds," added another council member. "You did it in 2 centuries. This is dangerous." Jake felt his hands clench into fists, but he kept them at his sides. Behind him stood Admiral Lisa Kane and Dr. Paul Rodriguez. They were the only other humans allowed in the hall. Lisa was a military leader with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Paul was a scientist who had spent his whole life trying to understand alien cultures. "We explore because that is what humans do," Jake said. "We want to learn. We want to grow. We want to make friends." Vorthak's skin got even darker. "Friends? You call this friendship? You show up in our space without asking. You build cities on worlds we might want someday. You trade with everyone and make them depend on you." "We asked permission for every colony," Jake replied. "We followed all the rules. We paid all the fees." "The rules were made when we thought you would grow slowly like everyone else," said Counselor Drex. "He was made of living crystal, and when he talked it sounded like music. But today, his music sounded sad and angry. No one expected humans to spread so fast." Lisa stepped forward. She was not supposed to talk unless Jake asked her to, but she could not stay quiet anymore. "So you want to punish us for being successful?" The hall went very quiet. No one had ever talked back to the council like that before. Cythera's bug eyes all turned to look at Lisa. "This is exactly the problem. You do not respect proper order. You do not wait your turn. You act like you own the galaxy." "We act like we belong in it," Paul said quietly. "Because we do." Vorthak stood up from his chair. He was even bigger than Jake had thought. "This meeting will decide if that is true." The speaker looked at a glowing tablet in front of him. "The Galactic Council has made its decision. Humanity has 30 standard days to stop all expansion beyond your current borders. You will not build new colonies. You will not explore new systems. You will stay where you are." Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "For how long?" "Until the council decides you have learned to behave properly," Cythera answered. "Maybe in a few hundred years you will be ready to expand again." "And if we refuse?" Lisa asked. The council members looked at each other. This was not a question they heard very often. "Then there will be consequences," Vorthak said. "First, we will stop all trade with human worlds. No more buying your goods, no more selling you what you need. Then we will block your ships from using the jump gates that connect different star systems," added Counselor Brutex. He was big and covered in thick armor. "You will be trapped in your own little corner of space. And if that does not work," Vorthak continued, "we will use our fleets to force you to obey." Jake looked back at Lisa and Paul. They both nodded slightly. They had talked about this possibility many times. "There is a third option," Jake said. The council members leaned forward. This was new. "We could leave," Jake said simply. The hall went completely silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to stop making their soft humming sound. Leave? Vorthak repeated. Leave where? Leave your space entirely, Jake explained. Go somewhere else. Find new places to explore that do not bother you. Cythera's mandibles clicked rapidly. There is nowhere else to go. We control this entire region of the galaxy. You control this region, Jake agreed. But the galaxy is very big. Counselor Drex's crystal body began to glow brighter. You cannot be serious. Leaving known space is suicide. There are no safe routes, no friendly ports, no established trade. Then, we will make our own routes, Lisa said. Build our own ports, create our own trade. The council members started talking to each other in their own languages. The hall filled with clicking, humming, growling, and sounds that human ears could barely hear. Finally, Vorthak held up one of his clawed hands for silence. You would really leave everything you have built here? If that is what it takes to remain free, Jake said. This is foolish, said Counselor Yathara, who had not spoken before. She looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. Your people will die out there in the dark between galaxies. Maybe, Paul said, but we will die as humans, not as pets in a cage. The council went quiet again. They had never heard anyone talk like this before. In their thousands of years of ruling, no species had ever chosen exile over obedience. Vorthak's skin was now so dark, it was almost black. The council needs time to consider this unusual response. You have 7 days to make your final decision. We understand, Jake said, but I think you should know something. What? We are not asking for your permission to leave. We are telling you that it is one of our options. The hall erupted in angry sounds from all 12 council members. They were not used to being told what humans would or would not do. Vorthak slammed his fist on his chair. 7 days. Choose wisely, humans. Choose to obey, choose to face our fleets, or choose to disappear into the darkness. But choose. Jake bowed slightly, just enough to be polite, but not enough to look weak. We will. As the 3 humans walked out of the hall, they could hear the council members arguing loudly behind them. Some wanted to attack the human worlds immediately. Others wanted to offer a compromise. A few seemed worried about what would happen if the humans really did leave. Once they were outside the building, Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. Did we just threaten the most powerful government in known space? No, Jake said. We just told them the truth. Humans do not kneel. Paul was already working on his communication device. I need to send a message to Earth. Codename Phoenix. Phoenix? Lisa asked. The plan we hoped we would never need, Jake explained. The plan to rise from the ashes of everything we have built here and become something new somewhere else. As their ship lifted off from the crystal planet, Jake looked back at the council building one last time. In 7 days, they would have an answer. But in his heart, he already knew what that answer would be. The council had given humanity 3 choices. What they did not understand was that humans had already chosen long ago. They would be free, or they would find freedom somewhere else. The galaxy was about to become a much lonelier place. Captain Roy Phillips was eating breakfast on his ship when the message came in. The UES Horizon was a cargo vessel that carried supplies between human colonies. Roy had been doing this job for 15 years and thought he knew what to expect. Each day, the message was encrypted with codes he had never seen before. When he decoded it, there were only 4 words. Phoenix Protocol is active. Roy set down his coffee cup and stared at the screen. Phoenix Protocol was something they had talked about during his military training, but he never thought it would actually happen. It was the plan for what to do if humanity ever had to leave council space entirely. On the bridge, his crew was going about their normal work. They did not know that everything was about to change. Attention all hands, Roy announced over the ship's communication system. Report to the main meeting room immediately. His crew of 12 people gathered quickly. They could tell from his voice that something important was happening. We have received new orders, Roy said. As of today, we are no longer a cargo ship. We are now part of the largest evacuation in human history. The room went silent. Finally, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Betty Walsh, spoke up. Evacuation from where? From here. From all of this. Roy gestured around them. From council space. At the same time, similar meetings were happening on hundreds of human ships throughout the galaxy, on research stations, in colony meeting halls, and in military command centers. The same message was being delivered. Dr. Patricia Bell was working in her laboratory on Kepler Station when her assistant, Tony Garcia, burst through the door. Dr. Bell, you need to see this message right away, Tony said, holding out a datapad. Patricia read the message twice before she understood it. They want us to pack up 30 years of research and leave? That's what it says, Tony replied. Everything. All the data, all the samples, all the equipment we can carry. Patricia looked around her lab. She had spent decades studying alien plant life and how it could be used to help humans survive on different worlds. Her work had saved thousands of lives by creating new medicines and food sources. How much time do we have? She asked. The transport. Ships arrive in 6 days, Tony said. 6 days to pack up a lifetime of work. Patricia rolled up her sleeves and got started. On New Shanghai Colony, Governor Alex Chen was holding an emergency meeting with his department heads. 2 million people lived on New Shanghai, making it one of the largest human settlements outside of Earth. I know this is hard to believe, Alex said to the room full of worried faces. But the order comes directly from Earth Command. We have 3 weeks to evacuate everyone who wants to leave. Everyone? Asked Maria Santos, who ran the colony's food production systems. What about people who want to stay? Anyone who stays will be on their own, Alex replied. The council will probably take over the colony once we're gone. They might let some humans remain, but they will have to follow council rules. The room erupted in angry voices. These people had spent years building New Shanghai. They had homes, businesses, and friends here. Where are we supposed to go? Demanded Chief Engineer Robert Kim. That information is classified for now, Alex said. But I can tell you that preparations have been made. There are places for us to go. Maria raised her hand. What about all the food production systems? The hospitals? The schools? We can't just abandon everything. We're not abandoning it, Alex explained. We're leaving it for whoever comes after us, but we're taking the knowledge of how to build it all again. The evacuation began immediately. It was not like the panicked escapes you see in movies. Instead, it was quiet and organized. Humans had always been good at planning, and they had been preparing for this possibility for years. Transport ships arrived at colonies throughout human space. These were not military vessels, but converted cargo ships and passenger liners. They landed quietly, loaded up with people and essential supplies, and left without fanfare. The humans who were leaving took only what they could carry: personal belongings, family pictures, and small keepsakes. Everything else was left behind, carefully maintained and ready for the next occupants. On Mars, the oldest human colony outside of Earth, the evacuation was particularly emotional. The Chen family had lived there for 4 generations. I was born in this house, said elderly Mrs. Chen as she packed her few belongings. My children were born here. My grandchildren took their first steps in this garden. Her son David helped her fold her clothes. We'll build a new garden, Mom. Maybe an even better one. It won't be the same, she said sadly. No, David agreed. It will be different, but it will still be home, because we'll be there together. Not everyone chose to leave. About 10% of humans in council space decided to stay. They were mostly older people who did not want to start over, or people who had married aliens and wanted to remain with their families. Jake Morrison met with some of these people before he left. Are you sure about this? He asked Dr. Helen Wright, who had decided to stay on the research station where she worked. I'm 78 years old, Helen replied. I've spent my whole career studying Zentari biology. This is where my work belongs. The boy council might not let you continue your research, Jake warned. Helen smiled. Then I'll teach what I know to young Zentari scientists. Knowledge should not disappear just because its creator leaves. The aliens who had worked closely with humans were sad to see them go. Ambassador Zilith of the Andromedans contacted Jake privately. "This feels wrong," Zilith said through their telepathic connection. "Your people brought so much energy and new ideas to our galaxy." "The Council made their choice," Jake replied. "Now we're making ours." "But where will you go? Space is dangerous, beyond the borders of Council territory." Jake was quiet for a moment. "We'll find a way. We always do. I wish there was something my people could do to help." "You tried," Jake said. "The Andromedans were the only ones who spoke for us in the Council. We won't forget that." The evacuation continued for months. Slowly, quietly, millions of humans packed up their lives and disappeared into the darkness between stars. They left, behind clean colonies, working factories, and detailed instruction manuals for everything they had built. On each world they evacuated, the humans left a message in the planetary archives. The message was always the same. "To whoever comes after us, we leave these facilities in good working order. We have included complete instructions for their operation and maintenance. We take only what belongs to us by right of creation or discovery. We wish you well in your future endeavors." The Council barely noticed at first. They were used to some movement of human populations as people relocated for work or family reasons. It took several months before they realized that the movement was all going in one direction, out. By then it was too late to stop it, even if they had wanted to. The humans were not fleeing in panic. They were leaving methodically, completely, and permanently. Captain Roy Phillips made the last official human departure from Council space. His ship, now renamed the UES Exodus, carried the final group of evacuees from a small research outpost. As they passed through the last jump gate that would take them beyond Council territory, Roy looked back at the stars they were leaving behind. "Any regrets, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Walsh. Roy thought for a moment. "Only that it had to come to this. We could have done great things together." "Maybe we still will," Walsh said. "Just not here." Roy nodded and gave the order to jump. Behind them, the galaxy grew, a little quieter and a little lonelier. The great human exodus was complete. Now came the hard part, building something new in the darkness between stars. Counselor Drex was the first to notice something was wrong. His crystal body glowed with confusion as he studied the trade reports from the past 6 months. "The numbers don't make sense," he told his assistant, a young Zentari named Kellex. "Human. Trade activity has dropped by 40%. Kellex looked at the data on his screen. "Maybe they are just buying less because of the new restrictions?" "No," Drex said, his musical voice sounding worried. "They are not buying less. They are buying nothing at all. Look at these shipping records. No human cargo ships have docked at Zentari Prime in 3 months." This was strange because human traders came to Zentari Prime every week. They brought rare metals from asteroid mining operations and bought Zentari artwork and spices. It was a trade relationship that had lasted for 50 years. Drex decided to investigate further. He sent messages to other Council worlds asking about human trade activity. The responses he got back made his crystal form dim with concern. Krolex reported that human merchants had stopped coming to their markets. The Siltari said that human research teams had abandoned their joint science projects. Even the Morgothians, who barely tolerated any aliens, noticed that human diplomats had stopped requesting meetings. "It's like they're all just disappearing," Drex reported to Speaker Vorthak during their weekly meeting. Vorthak's scales shifted to a pale yellow color. "Disappearing, that's ridiculous. You don't just lose an entire species." "I'm not saying we lost them," Drex explained. "I'm saying they're withdrawing from all contact with us." "Good," growled Counselor Brutex from his armored chair. Maybe they finally learned their place. But as weeks turned into months, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening. Reports came in from across Council space. Human colonies that had been bustling with activity just a year ago were now empty. Not destroyed, not conquered, just empty. Captain Thex of the Krolex Defense Force was ordered to investigate. He took his ship to New Shanghai Colony, which had been home to 2 million humans just months before. What he found there puzzled him completely. The colony was in perfect condition. The buildings were clean and well-maintained. The power systems were running normally. The water treatment plants were operating automatically, but there were no people anywhere. It's like they all just vanished into thin air, Thex reported back to his commanders. But they left everything working perfectly. His team searched the entire colony. They found something even stranger than empty buildings. In the main administrative center, there was a complete database of how everything worked. Instructions for maintaining the power grid, operating the farming systems, and even fixing the waste recycling plants. Why would they leave all this information behind? Asked Lieutenant Kex, Thex's second in command. I don't know, Thex admitted. It's like they wanted whoever came after them to be able to keep everything running. Similar discoveries were made throughout human space. Colony after colony, research station after research station, all empty but perfectly preserved. The humans had not fled in panic. They had carefully shut down their operations and disappeared. The economic impact began to show within 6 months. The Galactic Trade Commission released a report that shocked the Council. Interspecies commerce has declined by 35%, announced Commissioner Vith, a floating being made of glowing gas. The humans were not just participants in our economy. They were the connections that held it together. This was something the Council had never realized. Humans had a unique gift for languages and cultural understanding. They could talk to species that refused to deal with each other directly. For example, the Krolex and the Silthari had been enemies for centuries and would not trade with each other. But both species traded with humans, who then traded with the other. The humans had become the middle link in dozens of such relationships. The Zentari-Morgothian spice trade has completely stopped, Vyth continued. The Morgothians will not deal directly with Zentari traders, and without human intermediaries there is no way to make the connection. Counselor Cythera's mandibles clicked nervously. Surely other species can learn to fill this role. We've tried, Vith replied. The Andromedans attempted to mediate the Krolex-Silthari trade dispute. The negotiations lasted 3 days before both sides walked out. The humans used to settle similar disputes in hours. But the trade problems were just the beginning. Dr. Vilix, the Council's chief medical officer, brought even more disturbing news. We're facing a health crisis, he announced during an emergency council session. The Zentari colonies are dealing with a plague that affects their respiratory systems. Normally, we would ask the human medical teams for help. Why can't our own doctors handle it? Asked Forthak. Because humans have a unique biology that makes them immune to many diseases that affect other species, Vilix explained. They could study dangerous pathogens safely and develop treatments without risking their own lives. They were working on cures for 17 different cross-species diseases. What happened to that research? Cythera demanded. Gone, Vilix said simply. They took it all with them when they left. The technology crisis was perhaps the most serious of all. Human scientists had been involved in joint research projects throughout Council space. They had a way of thinking about problems that was different from other species. The quantum computer project has ground to a halt, reported Dr. Zelf, the Council's science advisor. The human team leader, Dr. Patricia Bell, was the only one who understood how to calibrate the quantum matrices. Without her, we can't make any progress. Can't you just follow her notes? Asked Drex. That's the problem, Zelf replied. She took all her research with her. Every equation, every test result, every failed experiment that taught us what not to do. It's all gone. Ambassador Zelith of the Andromedans was the most worried of all the council members. His people had worked closely with humans for decades and had developed genuine friendships with many of them. I've been trying to contact human colonies for months, Zelith reported. My people have sent ships to every known human settlement. What we found is troubling. Troubling how? Forthak asked. The colonies are empty, but there are no signs of where the humans went. No ship trails, no subspace signatures, no quantum wake patterns. It's as if they simply ceased to exist. That's impossible, Brutex growled. Ships leave traces. Large groups of people can't just disappear without evidence. That's what we thought too, Zelith replied. But our best sensors find nothing. Either the humans have developed technology we don't understand, or they've found a way to travel that leaves no trace. The possibility that humans had developed advanced technology in secret was deeply unsettling to the Council. They had always assumed that their own sciences were superior to human capabilities. How advanced could they be? Cythera asked. They're barely 200 years old as a spacefaring species. Age doesn't always determine technological capability, Zelith pointed out. Humans have always been unusually creative. They find solutions that the rest of us never consider. 3 months later, a discovery was made that changed everything. A routine survey of an abandoned human research station found something that had been overlooked before. A message. The message was left by Dr. Patricia Bell, the same scientist whose quantum research had been so important to the Council's projects. Anyone who finds this, her recorded image said, I want you to know that we didn't leave because we were angry. We left because we understood that our presence was causing problems for the established order. The recording continued. We've taken only what belonged to us by right of discovery or creation. We've left behind detailed instructions for maintaining everything we built. We hope these facilities will be useful to whoever comes after us. But the most important part of the message came at the end. We've found a new path forward, one that doesn't require us to limit our growth or our dreams. We wish the Council well, but we won't be returning. When the Council members heard this message, they finally understood what had happened. The humans had not been driven away by force or fear. They had made a choice to leave and find their own destiny somewhere else. They're not coming back, Zelith said quietly after the message ended. Good, Brutex rumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. For the first time since the crisis began, Vorthak's scales turned completely white. In his species, this was a sign of deep regret. The Council had gotten exactly what they thought they wanted. A galaxy without human interference. But now they were beginning to understand what they had actually lost. 5 years had passed since the last human ship was seen in Council space. The Galactic Council chambers, once filled with confident voices making decisions for billions of beings, now echoed with arguments and desperation. Speaker Vorthak's scales had remained a sickly pale color for months. His species showed stress through their skin, and everyone could see that the burden of leadership was crushing him. The Council met every day now, instead of once a week, but their problems only seemed to get worse. The Corvin-Silthari conflict has resumed, reported General Thex, his armored shell bearing new scars from recent battles. The peace treaty lasted exactly 4 months after the humans left. The Corvins and Silthari had been enemies for over 1,000 years before humans arrived. When humans became involved 50 years ago, they had managed to negotiate a lasting peace between the two species. Human diplomats had a way of finding common ground that no one else could match. What started the fighting this time? Asked Councillor Drex, his crystal form glowing dimly with exhaustion. The same old territorial dispute over the Nexus system, Thex replied. Both species claim it belongs to them. The humans had worked out a sharing agreement, but without them to enforce it. Why can't we enforce it? Demanded Brutex, slamming his massive fist on his chair. Because neither side trusts us to be fair, Thex explained. The Corvins think we favor the Silthari. The Silthari think we favor the Corvins, but they both trusted the humans to be neutral. The war was just one of many conflicts that had erupted across Council space. Humans had been peacekeepers in dozens of small disputes, using their strange ability to understand all sides of an argument. Without them, old hatreds were flaring up everywhere. Councillor Cythera received reports from her intelligence network every day, and each report was worse than the last. The Zentari rebellion on Outer Rim worlds is spreading, she announced. 3 more systems have declared independence this week. Can't the Zentari government handle their own rebels? Asked Vorthak. That's the problem, Cythera replied. The rebels are using human-designed communication systems that we can't break. The humans taught them how to build networks that are completely secure. This was another problem the Council had not foreseen. Humans had shared their technology freely with other species, but they had taken their knowledge of how to counter that technology with them when they left. Dr. Vilix brought the medical reports, and they were devastating. The Zentari plague has now spread to 12 colony worlds, he announced. We've lost over 2 million people so far, and we're no closer to finding a cure. What about the research the humans left behind? Drex asked hopefully. That's just the problem, Vilix said. They left behind treatments for diseases we already knew how to handle. But this plague is new, and human doctors were the only ones who could safely study it. Their immune systems protected them from infections that would kill the rest of us. The plague was spreading because human medical teams had been the ones who usually investigated new diseases. They could work directly with dangerous pathogens, without wearing the bulky protective suits that slowed down other species. We've tried using robot systems to do the research, Vilix continued, but it's not the same. Human doctors had an intuition about biological systems that our machines can't replicate. The economic crisis was perhaps the most visible problem. Commissioner Veith presented trade figures that shocked even the council members who thought they understood how bad things had become. Interspecies trade has collapsed by 67%, Veith announced. The humans weren't just traders themselves, they were the bridge that connected our entire economic system. The numbers were staggering. Before humans left, a typical day saw thousands of ships moving goods between different species. Now, that number had dropped to hundreds. Many species simply refused to deal with each other directly. The Morgothians will only trade with 3 other species, Veith explained, before they traded with humans, who then traded with everyone else. Now 14 different species have no access to Morgothian technology. Can't we convince the Morgothians to expand their trading partnerships? Asked Cythera. We've tried, Vith replied. Their response was, bring back the humans and we'll consider it. This attitude was common throughout council space. Many species had grown comfortable dealing with humans as intermediaries. Now they were discovering that they had forgotten how to negotiate with each other directly. But the technological crisis was the most frightening development of all. Dr. Zelf, the council's chief science advisor, brought reports that made the future look very bleak. Our technological advancement has essentially stopped, Zelf announced. In the 5 years since humans left, we've made almost no progress in any major field of research. That's impossible, Brutex growled. We have the best scientists in the galaxy. We have excellent scientists, Zelf agreed. But they all think in similar ways. Humans thought differently. They approach problems from angles we never considered. Zelf showed the council a holographic display of research projects that had been abandoned or stalled. The list was enormous. The quantum computer project is dead without human input. The faster-than-light communication system can't be completed. The terraforming advances that were going to help us colonize hostile worlds, all impossible without human creativity. Surely our scientists can learn to think like humans did, Drex suggested. That's like asking a fish to learn to fly, Zelf replied. Different species have different ways of processing information. Humans had a unique combination of logical thinking and wild creativity that we simply can't replicate. Ambassador Zilith of the Andromedans brought perhaps the most disturbing news of all. His people had been conducting long-range surveys trying to find any trace of where the humans had gone. We've detected something unprecedented in the outer reaches of the galaxy, Zilith reported. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. He activated a holographic display that showed sensor readings from the edge of explored space. The readings showed massive construction projects and energy outputs that dwarfed anything in council space. You think this is human activity? Vorthak asked, his scales turning an even paler shade. The quantum signatures match human technology, but evolved far beyond what we knew they possessed, Zilith confirmed. They've had 5 years to develop without any restrictions or oversight. The implications were staggering. If humans had continued to advance at their previous rate, without council limitations, they might have achieved technological breakthroughs that put them decades ahead of council science. How is that possible? Cythera demanded. 5 years, Their technology was barely equal to ours. 5 years ago they were following our rules, Zelith pointed out. They had to get council approval for dangerous experiments. They had to share their research with committee oversight. They had to slow down their work to match our bureaucratic pace. Now they can develop as fast as they want, Drex said quietly. And they're doing exactly that, Zelith confirmed. The council chamber fell silent as the members absorbed this information. They had feared human expansion and advancement, so they had driven humanity away, but exile had not slowed human development. It had accelerated it beyond anything they could have imagined. We need to contact them, Vorthak said finally. Apologize, invite them back. I don't think they're interested in coming back, Zelith replied sadly. My people have been trying to establish contact for 2 years. We've sent messages to every frequency humans ever used. We've left communication beacons at the edge of their old territory. Nothing. Maybe they can't hear us, suggested Cythera. Or maybe they choose not to answer, Zelith said. Think about it from their perspective. We told them they weren't welcome here. We threatened them with military action. We forced them to abandon homes they had built over generations. Why would they want to come back? The truth was becoming clear to all of them. The council had not just lost a member species. They had lost the future they might have shared. Human innovation, human diplomacy, human connections between different cultures, all of it was gone. What do we do now? Asked Drex. Vorthak looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow council members. For the first time in his long career, he had no answer. The galaxy felt emptier and darker without humanity, and the council was finally beginning to understand that some mistakes could never be undone. 10 years had passed since the last human ship left council space. The galactic council chambers, once a symbol of order and power, now felt like a tomb filled with the ghosts of missed opportunities. Speaker Vorthak stood before the assembled council members, his scales a permanent pale white that indicated deep shame in his species. The report in his hands contained information that would change everything they thought they knew about their decision to exile humanity. Fellow council members, Vorthak began, his voice heavy with years of regret. Ambassador Zelith has returned. From the longest survey mission in Andromedan history, what he discovered will shock us all. Zelith stepped forward, his form shimmering with emotions that his species rarely showed in public. The Andromedans were known for their calm, logical nature, but today Zelith looked deeply troubled. My people have spent 3 years tracking energy signatures to their source, Zelith announced. We have found the humans. The chamber erupted in excited voices. For the first time in years, there was hope in the air. Where are they? Demanded Councillor Cythera, her mandibles clicking rapidly. Can we contact them? Zelith activated a massive, holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. What appeared before them made every council member fall silent. The display showed structures so massive they defied comprehension. Space stations the size of small moons orbited around artificial suns. Ships moved between these structures without any visible propulsion systems, seeming to bend space itself around them. This is human civilization today, Zelith said quietly. They have built not just colonies but entire worlds. Not just space stations but orbital cities that house billions of people. Councillor Drex's crystal form began to resonate with a low, mournful note. How is this possible? 10 years ago, their largest space station could hold 50,000 people. 10 years ago, they were following our rules, Zelith replied. Our safety regulations, our environmental guidelines, our restrictions on dangerous research. They had to slow down their progress to match our bureaucratic pace. The holographic display zoomed in on one of the massive structures. Council members gasped as they saw details that should have been impossible. That structure is generating its own gravity without any rotating sections, observed Dr. Zelf, the council's science advisor. They've mastered artificial gravity fields. Look at the energy readings, added Dr. Vilix. They're harnessing the power of entire stars, not just collecting solar energy but actually controlling stellar fusion. Zelith nodded grimly. Our scientists estimate that human technology has advanced by at least 200 years in the decade since they left.
Us.
They've achieved things we thought were impossible. Brutex shifted uncomfortably in his armored chair. So they built some big machines. They're still just humans. Are they? Zilith asked, changing the display to show human ships moving through space. Watch this. The ships on the display suddenly vanished, only to reappear instantly thousands of miles away. They had not moved through space. They had simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another. Instantaneous travel, Zilith explained. No jump gates, no hyperspace tunnels, no time delay. They think of where they want to be, and they are there. The council chamber was completely silent. This was technology so advanced that it seemed like magic. We must contact them immediately, Vorthak said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. We need to apologize and invite them back. We tried, Zilith replied sadly. For 3 years my people attempted to establish communication. We sent messages on every frequency. We tried telepathic contact. We even sent physical probes with diplomatic requests. What happened? Asked Scythera. Nothing, Zilith said. They ignored us completely. Not because they couldn't hear us, but because they chose not to respond. The truth hit the council like a physical blow. The humans were not just gone, they were deliberately avoiding contact with their former neighbors. Perhaps they didn't recognize the messages as coming from us? Suggested Drex hopefully. Zilith shook his head. One of our probes was returned to us, unharmed but with a simple message attached. Thank you for your concern, but we have moved beyond the need for council approval. Vorthak sank into his chair, the weight of his species' greatest mistake crushing down on him. We drove away the one species that could have elevated us all. Dr. Vilix brought forward medical reports that made the situation even more heartbreaking. The Zentari plague finally ended last month. We lost over 8 million people across 12 worlds. Our medical teams estimate that human doctors could have found a cure within weeks of the outbreak. The Corvin-Silthari War has claimed over 50,000 lives, added General Thex. Human diplomats used to settle such disputes in days. Now we've been fighting for 3 years with no end in sight. Our technological advancement has essentially stopped, Dr. Zelf reported. Meanwhile, humans have achieved breakthroughs that put them centuries ahead of us. Commissioner Vythe presented the economic data that painted the bleakest picture of all. Interspecies trade is now at 20% of what it was before the humans left. Our economic system is collapsing without them to connect different species. But perhaps the most devastating report came from the Council's intelligence services. Agent Kythera, a spy who had spent years monitoring border regions, brought news that changed everything. The humans are not alone out there, Kythera announced. They've made contact with other species beyond our territory, species we never knew existed. The holographic display changed to show new ship designs that were clearly not human, but moved alongside human vessels in perfect coordination. They're building alliances, Kythera continued. A new galactic community based on cooperation and shared growth rather than rigid control. How many species have joined them? Vorthak asked weakly. Our best estimates suggest at least 20 different species have formed partnerships with humanity. Some of them have technology that rivals what the humans have achieved. The implications were staggering. While the Council space stagnated and fought among itself, humanity was building a new civilization that was growing stronger every day. Councillor Cythera's voice was barely a whisper. We could have been part of that. Yes, Zilith agreed. If we had embraced human innovation instead of fearing it, if we had supported their growth instead of trying to limit it, we could have been their partners in building this new future. Vorthak stood slowly, his aged body showing the strain of 10 years of regret. I hereby call for a formal vote. Should the Galactic Council send an official delegation to human space with an apology and a request for renewed contact? The vote was unanimous. Every species, even Brutex's Morgothians, agreed that they needed to try to repair the relationship with humanity. But deep down, they all knew it was too late. The humans had moved beyond them. Both literally and figuratively, they had found something better than what the Council could offer. 3 months later, the Council's most advanced diplomatic ship approached the edge of human space. What they found there was a simple automated beacon that broadcast a message in perfect Council speak. To our former neighbors in Council space, we thank you for teaching us that we did not need your approval to reach for the stars. We have found our own path to infinity, and we are not alone on this journey. We wish you well in your future endeavors, but we will not be returning to the restrictions of the past. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to find our own destiny. The message was signed simply, the Free Worlds Alliance. When the diplomatic ship returned with this message, Vorthak read it aloud to the full council. When he finished, the chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, old Counselor Drex spoke, his crystal voice filled with the wisdom of hindsight. We were so afraid of what the humans might become that we never stopped to think about what we might become alongside them. Vorthak nodded, his scales now permanently white with shame. We watched them leave because we thought we were preserving our way of life. We discovered too late that our way of life was already changing, and we had exiled the very people who could have helped us change for the better. The Council continued to meet, continued to govern their slowly shrinking territory, but they never forgot the lesson humanity had taught them. Sometimes the greatest threat to order is not rebellion or revolution, but the quiet departure of those who could have made everything better. In the end, humanity had given the Council exactly what they thought they wanted: a galaxy without human interference. The Council's regret struck too late to matter, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was building something magnificent that the Council would never see, never share, and never truly understand.